So on to our speakers. So we have three speakers for you today. I'm just going to give them a little bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to introduce our facilitator for the evening. So first up, we'll hear from Mike Riddell. And Mike Riddell has been interested in developing a community currency which acknowledges volunteers' contribution to the economy since 2007. Mike is a lover of Northern soul and a strong supporter of Northern people as a power force for positive change. Next up, we'll hear from Alex Phillips, and Alex is a social entrepreneur, support manager based in the West Midlands and working across the north of England. She has worked at Unltd since 2015 and previously worked in local authorities and housing associations, supporting community regeneration initiatives and even working in partnership with Unltd to find, fund and support early stage social entrepreneurs. Alex is passionate about working with people in communities that have great potential, but don't realize that they are social entrepreneurs yet, and exploring how we can all contribute to creating systemic change to provide more equitable opportunities for all. Alex, you want to say a quick hi as I'm introducing you?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm really happy that you're here to listen and to connect with us, and you'll find out a bit more shortly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. And finally, we'll hear from Jen. And Jen is the director of Kindred LCR. Jen and the Kindred team work with socially trading organizations, what they call STOs, to grow their businesses and their individual and collective social impact across the Liverpool City region. After spending nearly a decade running a large socially trading organization in Liverpool, Jen understands the opportunities and challenges facing STOs and the vital role STOs play in revitalization of neighborhoods, communities, and improving people's lives. Previously, Jen has set up and led partnership programs with community-based organizations and not-for-profit organizations internationally, pioneering programs with Stanford University and the American Institute for Foreign Study. Jen, do you want to just say a quick hi?
Hi, everyone. Really pleased to be here this evening and really looking forward to an engaging discussion with you all.
Thanks so much, Jen. So I'm going to hand over now to Monica, who's going to help us from the Summit team, who's going to help us with facilitation through the evening. Over to you, Monica.
Person that I'm going to speak to is Mike Riddell. Now, Mike is from Counter Community. So, Mike, can you tell us in a paragraph, please, what Counter Communities is? In a paragraph.
Well, yeah, okay. So essentially what we're attempting to do is to help frontline community groups commercialize their social value.
Thank you. So
to get paid for what they do, rather than having to go to the begging bowl every 5 minutes for funding. That it's just a hassle and an aggro, and shouldn't be their job.
I think what I particularly adore about Counter Communities is that what you seek to do is to actually reward volunteers. And for anybody that doesn't know, volunteers actually contribute approximately £23 billion to the economy on an annual basis. It's nothing at all to be ignored, really. 23 billion is a phenomenal amount. And so, Mike, I suppose I wanted to find out what made you decide that volunteers needed an alternative way of being rewarded, and if you could just briefly explain that for me, please.
So I used to develop shopping centres. Retail-led regeneration was my bag, and in order to get people to come into my shopping centre in Wigan, in the face of massive competition from neighbouring towns, the Trafford Centre, retail parks, and Amazon, which just started, this is all in 2007. I decided we needed some sort of reward scheme like Tesco Club Card points, that sort of thing, which thank God must be shopping at Tesco. So that's where the idea came from. I came across somebody called Barbara Nettleton from Wigan, who ran a community centre about a mile away in the middle of a load of, tower blocks, basically. And she was running a loyalty scheme, and, we got to know each other, and she invited me over. And when I first met her in the suit in this little poky little community centre in the front room with Pat and Eileen, typing away and answering questions. This girl, and Barbara's, by the way, is about 75. She's one of these, beautiful people, but as hard as nails. You don't mess with her. She just really is so hard. She's the matriarch of a whole the hardest part of Wigan. Anyway, this I don't know, so I call her 28-year-old woman ran in her bra and knickers. It was pissing down outside. She was completely drenched, and she was screaming that the kids had been taken off her. And I'm there in my suit thinking, what the fuck's going on here? I'm completely, I didn't know what to do. So Barbara just said, Pat, get her a cup of tea and take her next door. I'm like, wow, that was just so run of the mill for Barbara. I just honestly couldn't believe it. And I said to her, well, I said, does this happen a lot? And it transpires, happens all the time. This is like these kind of social issues that happen in a place like Skulls. And I'm like, well, I completely knew nothing about this side of life. I'm a chartered surveyor, in the business world. And so I said to her, well, so how do you get funded? She says, well, we have to rely on handouts from the council. I'm like, well, seriously? You do all this work on the front line, and this happens all the time, and there's nobody investing in your salaries? Or I said, no, we're all volunteers. I'm like, what? You're having a laugh, aren't you? And on the way back to my shopping centre, which is only a mile away, and I'm a chartered valuation surveyor, so my expertise is around valuation. I came to the conclusion that the shopping centre I just opened, a few days before was valued literally by the property professionals at £169 million. And I just thought, do you know what? That place is valued at nothing, but it's far more valuable than what I'm building. And so after that, I just realised that there was a real. This is 2007. There's a real need to think about how messed up the valuation system was, and why, I was being funded to build these clone towns in town centres, and and Barbara was struggling to put food on the table for people who were completely and utterly victims of a postcode. It just didn't make sense to me. And ever since then, I thought, well, business is shite because it takes its profits and puts them in the pockets of the shareholders to make them richer. But what business is good at doing is having a process of getting results. And I thought all Barbara needs is a bit of help to kind of commercialize what she's doing, because a lot of people would really get behind the effort that she's going to, the fact that she's a volunteer. And ever since then, I decided that, well, if Tesco can thank people for shopping at Tesco with these imaginary points, why can't we thank people for volunteering? And if you ask my wife, that's just how it started, and it's like been a curse ever since. That was 15 years ago, so it's we've seen crypto and stuff, so I wasn't miles off. Which ours is better. Ours is the community currency, not a Ponzi scheme. But anyway, that's hopefully that's the shortest answer to your question.
That is perfect. Thank you so much. And I think what I really love is the fact that you acknowledge the value, and just to explain as well, I'm a bit familiar with what Mike does. So some of what Mike tries to do also is to utilize the wastage as well of underused, say, capacity in say stadiums, and with food waste as well. So I really, really appreciated this almost circular economy that you have, where the excess is shared amongst everybody else. My other question I was going to ask you, Mike, I suppose, is often people see or have discussed volunteering, or volunteers get a bad name, and so have posed different names to call it. I don't know what your thoughts are on volunteering.
Well, it's a great question. That it used to have a stigma attached to it, I think, and I've realised I'm a volunteer and have done so for 15 years. I haven't been paid for any of this work, and I meet a lot of people who are volunteers now. And the truth is that when you volunteer for something that you passionately believe in, you put so much more into it, far more than if you were getting paid for it. And I think that's what pisses me off the most, is that volunteers are so undervalued. It's like artists and other sections of the community that the markets don't actually know how to value properly. But the question, I think, I'm proud to be a volunteer now, and I'm going to keep standing up for volunteers. I think it's so out of order the way that government expects people to do work that's unpaid, that they choose not to do themselves and pay for it. It's basically some sort of extraction or rentierism. It's basically subjugation, because most people who volunteer don't have a choice. There's two sets, in my opinion. There's the older people who retired and they just get bored at home, so they get sent out by their wives or whatever to go and volunteer. And then there's people who, as you know from the cultural squatters in Newcastle, who are not forced, but they're volunteering in a community centre, say, or a cultural squatters place, which is a safe space to go and learn how to cook, as you know, Mon. It's very often the first step in the road to recovery after a serious mental health trauma. You might have had a breakdown. In my case, you might have gone bust. You might have had a divorce. You might be like, I don't know. You might have been suicidal, and then you've actually managed to regain the confidence to go back into a place where other people actually are. And that's such an important thing to understand, that that first step of volunteering is very often the road back to recovery. So first step on the road to recovery, if we help and support people to get back into that road to recovery. So I'm a bit sick of the fact that volunteers get a bad rap or get seen as let's just give them a clap. Well, bollocks to that. Put your money where your mouth is. And I think all economics in my book is the allocation of scarce resources. That's all it is. And what you're saying before is absolutely right. The trouble with economics is they don't know a fucking resource when they see it looking in the face. People born on a certain postcode have got loads of future potential if we unlock it. The system doesn't want to unlock it. It just wants to keep them dependent on the state, not unlocking them. It's also the same in the business world. Like, look at all the buses that run past your house that are empty, half empty. These are resources with a fixed cost. The bus driver's cost the same, whether it's full or it's empty. The bus costs the same. The interest in the bus is exactly the same. The fuel's the same. You wouldn't fly to, I don't know, Spain every day with a third empty plane, would you? It's bonkers. Football stadiums, gyms, anybody who's a service provider, they're in the same boat. They're not optimizing their capacity. So it isn't just people that are resources going to waste. It's also business assets going to waste, where the costs are fixed, and they ought to be better bosses and better placed to optimize those resources. And that's the point about the waste. These are resources being wasted. Can't afford it. It's not going to work anymore.
Thank you so much, Mike. And I think I will use your optimization link, and I will introduce our next speaker. And the next person that I would like to invite to the conversation, thank you so much, Mike. The next person I'd like to invite into our conversation is Alex Phillips. And Alex works for Unltd. And I truly do believe that as part of optimizing people, Alex and Unltd actually allow that to happen, because they will seek to enable people to still have their time valued when working in a social capacity. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to leave Alex to continue. So Alex, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Can everybody see my screen? Can you just wave at me if you can see it?
Yeah, that's beautiful, Alex.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you very much. So, hi everyone, my name's Alex, and I work for Unltd, which is the foundation of social entrepreneurs. So I'm not here to flog Unltd tonight, but I'm here to talk about some of the work that we've been doing that's really catalysed social action in North Staffordshire. So I'm from Stoke-on-Trent. I live just on the outskirts of Stoke-on-Trent. And sort of away from my working life, I've always felt that there are these kind of hidden structural barriers that stop people from being able to reach the potential, as Mike's alluded to. And in North Staffordshire, a lot of people kind of move away. A lot of the young people move away to the bright lights of Manchester and Birmingham because they're really close. And actually, there's quite a lot of interesting stuff going on now that Unltd has helped to unlock, but it's very much got legs of its own now. So I'm kind of there to facilitate it, and it's very much a bottom-up led movement. I would describe it as a movement. So this is just a very quick whiz through about what Unltd is. So we're a trust. It's a charity, and we find social entrepreneurs in the community. So we want to work with people who wouldn't necessarily step up and get a business loan and start a business because they haven't got the confidence. It's not what people like them do. And they might feel that it's not for them because they've got to complete a complex application form and they don't want to go through the hassle of all that. And our vision essentially is we want to make the world a better place through enabling social entrepreneurs who are unusual suspects to kind of make it in the world and use their lived experience to create a business that sustains them financially, but also creates social impact. So it started, back in 2014. We talked about mainstreaming social enterprise because there's a lot of kind of misinformation or misunderstanding about what social enterprise is. A lot of people think it's charitable, it's not reliable, it's not a solid kind of business to work with when it comes to commissioning of services. And actually, we've done our own insights gathering in the public sector and the private sector in Stoke-on-Trent in particular, and we found that this is definitely the case. It's not just us with a hunch. We started talking about starting well, so it's like, how can we find people within those communities and give them the best start that they can? So I met Mike, who was starting to talk about counter community and counter coins back in 2017, and we were able to kind of just give him a bit of seed funding so he could explore what that might look like in North Staffordshire. And then in 2017, we embarked on a project called Resilient Communities, and this is the work that's really kind of got its own legs and is running now. What we'd been doing at Unltd was supporting loads of social entrepreneurs randomly and not really connecting them together. And what we looked at the Preston model, where there's anchor organisations, and we thought, if we can get together groups of social entrepreneurs and we can utilise what anchor organisations there are there to support them, plus create these networks and develop leadership and confidence, what might happen? And what happened was our social entrepreneurs, I had a small and perfectly formed group of local social entrepreneurs who then started to think, actually, we're not having much joy in talking to the local authority about getting contracts, and we're not established enough. But what if we used our collective voice to start to kind of create a bit of a stir about how we might do things a bit differently, and we can collectively make the case for the value of the social economy in North Staffordshire. So that's what they started to do. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that in terms of being able to help them connect with others and to be able to run some courses around the basics of being a social entrepreneur. And we're in 2022 now, and we're still kind of weathering the storm, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. We've got a couple of focus areas. One is around solutions for an ageing society. As you know, we're an ageing population, and access to employment for those who are more marginalised from being in employment for various reasons. And around that, we've got a really, really strong commitment around inclusion. So we favour people from marginalised communities and people who have lived experience of the social issue that they're trying to tackle. So through our place-based work, we provided a bit of seed funding specifically for North Staffordshire, and we worked with a consultant to try and find out how we could work together across sectors, because everything's really siloed, and all the kind of big institutions and it's different in all areas, are really resistant to change, and they keep throwing money at like ever increasing pressing social issues around poverty, cost of living, care, young people. And because the projects are the same, they're very top down, you kind of get limited success, and they kind of wonder why. And yet you've got all these kind of social entrepreneurs who are working directly with communities. They've got real insights. Those insights aren't particularly valued because they're not the stats that come from the local authority. So what we wanted to do was start to have those conversations with the private sector. Like, if they've got corporate social responsibility on their mind, how can that become meaningful? Rather than sending their staff to paint a wall, like, what can they do that's a bit different, that can kind of fit into this new system that can help to create social change? We worked with some control shift partners who came to North Staffordshire, who after coming to the summit were kind of a little bit excited about the conversations that we were having about exchanges for change. So literally what that was is that people working on the ground in North Staffordshire and people with various different expertise in different sectors had a conversation with local people. And this wasn't about, others coming into the area and imparting their knowledge. It was about having really deep conversations about what the challenges were, what's going wrong, what are the opportunities. And that was really eye-opening, because we felt that there was this kind of collective grief almost in North Staffordshire around the loss of the industries, and people weren't thinking about the future. They were dwelling on the past and how easy it might have been to go and get a job straight away, but not being able to shift out of that mindset. And we saw that as both a threat and an opportunity. And we talked about how we might be able to create a systemic change that might have been more focused on the things that Mike's talking around, kind of valuing people who are propping up the system but are currently right at the bottom of the pile. They're not seen as being valuable at all. And I think the kind of outcomes of COVID, where people sprung into action and they were knocking on the door and dealing with the elderly neighbours of feeding people and walking people's dogs and all those kind of things that just help people keep going over COVID. So in summary, we felt that the current economic system extracts, Mike said that, it's extracting all this kind of free stuff out of people who are really struggling. It obstructs because these kind of structural barriers for people who are, because of their postcodes, Mike alluded to, have got fewer life chances, lower educational attainment, lower health outcomes, and it's not inclusive. So the gap between the people who have and have not, the people who've got disposable income so that they can pay for nice well-being activities, why can't everybody access those kind of things? And why can't we? What if we could work across sectors to create an economy of kindness that isn't just about building a new car park or a new bridge? Like, what does that exactly add to our, Joe Bloggs who can't afford to pay for the gas? Like, where is this social infrastructure? If you've got buildings, shiny new buildings, like how does that link into the issues going on in North Staffordshire? And then we looked at how social enterprises might be able to upskill themselves, because that is the issue, is that, there's people with great ideas, but they might not be business people. So we're working with the local Chamber of Commerce and the local VCSE organisation to try and create this place in the middle where everyone can learn from each other. And we realised that even kind of mainly commercial businesses might have a social impact of some kind, and how do we measure that? And what if resistance to change was removed because we've been able to collectively show the impact, because we're not measuring it at the moment, we're just telling people about it. So how can we measure it in a way that everybody understands? Because there's loads of ways of measuring social impact, and it's a completely different language. Like, how can we make a shared measure of social impact that everybody can understand? So the challenge is we've had real trouble engaging with the local authority because they're really resistant to change. We feel there might be a tipping point where they might want to work more with social entrepreneurs. And there is a cluster of organisations who work with young people who are just starting to do that because they've got really serious terms of reference and a kind of governance structure that the local authority understands. Perceptions and norms about social entrepreneurs. So we're doing what we can to kind of tackle that. We're all volunteers in this. I'm in a paid role that's slightly different to the role that I'm doing with this kind of facilitating the work that the social entrepreneurs are leading on. And is the ambition too big? Like, we want to change the whole local economy. Is that possible with just a group of people who are doing this part-time? We thought that the cost of living crisis is only going to get worse, and that's kind of generating a lot of poor mental health. But also, as people are stretched financially, their focus goes away from looking at their own community and focused into what they need to do to be able to feed their family and heat their homes. And because no one really works together particularly well across the sectors in North Staffordshire, like, can we actually work together rather than competing for resources? This is my last slide. So we think that the timing is great for this, and I think that COVID has only accelerated the need and how receptive more traditional organisations are to have different conversations and do things slightly differently. This is a truly bottom-up movement. So, you know, a lot of things, including like the Preston model, I guess, are kind of managed by others. This is truly from people, and it's the will of social entrepreneurs to, you know, do things differently and be kind, etc. People are brilliant. Like, we're having fun doing this because it's hard work and sometimes it's frustrating, but actually it's really restoring my faith in my community because there's some amazing people and it's an absolute joy. One of the risks is the ambition too big, but actually the opportunity is the ambition is big. You know, why not? Let's go for a big moonshot. And why haven't we done this before? Like, it just makes complete sense that we can work with people in different sectors. There's some common ground, and that is that the people in North Staffordshire want better, be that a business person, be that a person, you know, who isn't currently employment, a single mom. Like, everybody wants that for North Staffordshire. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, we can work together, and even if it's just the joy of working together that's driving us on, and that's the only outcome, then it's all been worth it. And that is me. So I'm going to pass you on to Jen, who I believe is a former Unltd award winner.
Thank you very much, Alex. Can you all hear me okay? Fantastic. My name is Jen Mandemova. I'm the director of Kindred, Liverpool City region, based within the Liverpool City region. And yes, luckily, Kindred in its very early days of development were awarded some funding from Unltd to set up a Black social traders network, which is part of the Kindred programme, and that programme is going from strength to strength, and I'll allude to that as I go through my presentation a little bit later on. But I think what you were talking about before, Alex, and what Mike's alluded to tonight is that true partnership working. And I think that is particularly for Kindred, collaboration and partnership working is a bedrock of what we do. It all starts with, you know, making sure that we're being authentic in our communication and authentic in our partnership working. I think that's the only real way to really re-energise the social economy. And I'll give some real practical examples this evening about how we're delivering that on the ground here in Liverpool City region. So just to start off, we've got a short film that I'm going to share with you this evening. It's only just over 2 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll start with the film. Just bear with me 1 second. There we go.
Kindred is a different type of social investment.
Owned locally and collectively
to invest money and learning
In our community of socially trading organisations, we call ourselves STOs for short.
It's a vision of what happens when businesses invest in one another, collaborate to find solutions and come together. It's a kinder, more just economy that represents the best the region has to offer.
We're a collaborative network firmly rooted in our local communities, offering hands-on peer-to-peer support and learning.
During the pandemic, we're able to support each other online through Kindred, as well as the work we each do in our local communities.
The support that we get is tailored to growing our individual and collective social impact
and the Liverpool City region's social economy.
Some of that support is in money, some in contacts, networking and collaboration.
For some of us, it's just knowing the right person to ask for advice.
STOs are businesses that deliver social benefits and trade commercially,
with social purpose at our hearts.
We are not grant-reliant charities and we do not take profits out of the areas that we work in.
We are teachers and trainers,
musicians and makers,
carers and growers,
cyclists and sowers.
That was it, that was perfect. We include everyone from community businesses, community land trusts, CICs and social enterprises,
cooperatives, mission-driven companies and family businesses.
STOs are natural collaborators.
We understand that our economy flourishes when we collaborate, encourage and champion each other.
We work together, focusing on relationships and networks, not transactions, because together we are mighty. So what's different about Kindred?
Kindred is a CIC limited by guarantee.
It will be owned by its community for the benefit of its community. Kindred's been 5 years in the making.
Co-designed and developed by and with over 150 socially trading organisations in Liverpool City region.
STOs have been part of the conversation about what sort of money they're comfortable with.
The investments we've received are each bespoke.
Kindred has received money from the LCR Combined Authority and Power to Change.
But it's independent. It's a new way of doing things, designed to offer new kinds of money and support.
This allows us to take higher risks
and engage STOs that might not ordinarily get investment with patience and encouragement.
Kindred understands how we access money and how we show what we value doesn't work for everybody. And that's why we're doing something new. The money Kindred invests will be used time and again,
as we pay it forward when we pay it back.
Our collective value is measured by social impact and the change we create,
not just our financial returns.
We don't exist in isolation.
We are very much part of a national and global movement.
Together,
we are Kindred.
Okay, so hopefully you all saw that video then and it came across clearly. That video really just gives you a snapshot of what Kindred is and what we've achieved over the past 2 years that Kindred's been in existence. And I'm just going to talk you through how Kindred was established and how we do what we do to make it real on the ground. So I'm just going to share my screen with you and just take you through a few slides. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you can all see that screen. You've all disappeared from my screen now, so hopefully you can all see that. Okay, so Kindred is an organisation that was set up just under 2 years ago, and it was put together through the combined efforts of a community. There was over 150 social trading organisations across Liverpool City region who were part of the initial Collaborating Communities network. Those organisations were saying, to us what the sector has at the moment in terms of finance and what's available to the sector isn't fit for purpose and it doesn't work for them. So that really established a conversation about what type of money is suitable for those organisations, what is needed, and how do we work together to change things. So two of our founding members spoke to the Liverpool Combined Authority at different times, saying the same things, that we know that the social economy investment sector within the region is not fit for purpose, so how can we change it? Following consultation with social trading organisations right across the city region of various shapes and sizes at completely different times in their development, what they said to us was actually they want money that's patient, they want money that is not expensive, certainly not at 10%. They want support alongside the money, because it's not all about the money. And I think one of the key elements, which is part of Kindred's core founding principles, is that the social impact created should be valued as equally as a financial return. And I think that in itself is quite radical for the social investment sector, considering that the social investment sector previously has been based on anything from 10% return. I know some organisations are doing less than that now, but still those types of interest rates can put organisations in some financial difficulty. So it's about how we can address that. What organisations told us they needed was loans and grants that was a blended finance offer. And what that means is that approximately 70% of the money that we invest is repayable in money. So we get that money back. And then 30% is repayable in social value and social benefit. The money is 0%, which is, again, completely radical and new for the whole sector. We offer a 2-year payment holiday, which means that organisations are under stress and pressure to repay before they've even had a chance to implement the investments that they've had and put it to good use. And also the investments that we made are very patient. So anything from 5 years upwards, and it really depends on what the organisation needs. We don't have a one approach fits all organisations, and we really appreciate that every organisation is different and has different circumstances. Therefore, we'll try and tailor make our offer to suit the needs of that organisation. And we negotiate the terms of the contracts for those investments directly with the organisations. So I think that approach is quite unique. And I think the Liverpool Combined Authority can see this is a good opportunity to try something radically different for the sector. So Kindred is owned locally and collectively. And what that means is that the investment money that we have for the Combined Authority, which is about £5.5 million, and £1 million from Power to Change, that money is not Kindred's money. That's the social trading organisation's money right across Liverpool City region. And I think the shift in that power dynamic between it being us and them, I think is critical in terms of changing the landscape for social investments going forward. We are very much partners in this investment process with social trading organisations. And I think, one of the things that we say often to organisations is they're experts in their own business, first and foremost. So any advice and support that those organisations need, we encourage them to get from the network and from their peers. So the networking side of our organisation and the peer-to-peer support offer that we provide organisations as part of a movement, as Alex was talking about earlier, we're very similar in that we're trying to create a movement of social trading organisations who share expertise amongst themselves and view themselves as experts. That's a really key part of what we do. So just to go back, okay, so what is different about Kindred in a nutshell? As I said before, it's owned by its community for the benefit of its community. Our network has now evolved from 150 initially involved in the consultation to over 500 now. We've got just under 700 members actually at the moment, and our membership only launched in February, so we've grown quite substantially over the past couple of months. As I said before, we've got 6.5 million in total, but we've made our first investments last year with £1 million, and we're committed to investing £1 million a year in socially trading organisations across the city. And we invested in 22 organisations last year, and just over £1 million went out there. This year, we're just starting our second round of investments, and we have about 29 organisations currently still involved in our process. It's really important to note here that our process is different to the traditional social investment sector, and that we don't have an application process. We run a very non-competitive process because that's what the organisations told us they needed. Organisations told us they didn't want to have a lot of bureaucracy, they didn't have the time or necessarily the expertise to be filling out complicated forms. It duplicates work, and it's unnecessary. So we've tried to remove those barriers by providing a really clear, transparent process, and eliminate the competition element. And I'll talk about how we've done that a little bit later on in the presentation. Kindred's money is used time and time again. So what that means is that once money is invested in organisations, the money that's paid back into the pot as the time moves on, that money then will be used to invest in other social organisations and so on and so forth. They pay it forward in that respect. And the key really here is about the measurement of value, I think, which Mike and Alex have alluded to again this evening, about how we value social impact, and that the social returns is just as important to us as the financial returns. And I think that is a critical element to try and radically change the view of social investment and how it's administered and facilitated across the country. The 0% interest, again, is quite unique. We're the only organisation across the country who currently have an offer like this. But we truly believe that, if this is what the sector needs, this is what we need to figure out a way of making it work. And if that means that we need long-term financial support from central government to put into organisations like ourselves to give socially trading organisations that support they need in the early days, then it'll pay dividends in the long run. And we truly believe that. The incremental approach is key to how Kindred works. So we believe in giving organisations small amounts of money to test out and to try first. We believe that the only way to really learn and develop is to do. And so that's what we really encourage organisations to do, is to start small with small amounts of money, and then obviously we increase the amount of support and funding that we give based on the growth and the needs of the organisation. So we co-design the money, and that's a critical element of Kindred's model. Initially it was with 150 organisations, and that strong community reference groups. I think one of the key elements of Kindred's work is really being embedded in our communities. And that's the type of work that takes time, and it's predicated on building relationships and building trust. And I think that's a missing element of a lot of social investment that happens right across the country, is that it's not patient enough, and it's not necessarily built on those core principles of relationships and trust. That directly then influences risk appetite and organisations' view of risk and what they view as being high risk and low risk in terms of social investment. An example here is when organisations that would traditionally be seen as high risk by some social investors, we would deem as low risk, because we know we've put the time, the effort into those relationships to build up trust. So we know those businesses. And we really believe that, the entrepreneurs who are starting those businesses and who are leading those organisations, if you put your heart and soul into a business, then, it's very rare that those organisations fail. They don't fail. And the track record of the 22 organisations that we funded last year is that actually they've gone on to achieve much bigger things in terms of town deal applications and leveraging other funding in since they've been committed to our funding. So we're seeing the complete opposite to that in terms of risk appetite at the moment. This year, as I said before, we've got about 29 expressions of interest in. We're hoping to commit our funding to those organisations by middle of June, July. We're just kind of going through that process at the moment. Just going back to what I mean about the non-competitive process is we approve investments as a cohort. So we don't approve individual organisations or a panel of peers who assess the applications and have those kindred conversations with the organisations. Don't approve individual organisations that are approved as a cohort. So what that means is if there is a certain ask for an organisation to have more money than another organisation, and that's outside of Kindred's cost envelope of £1 million, then we ask those organisations to temper their ask and really think about what they need, not what they want. And I think we work with those organisations by doing workshops with them, one-to-one sessions, and really getting down to what organisations need, and then thinking about, well, what can we give you now that'll work for you, and then how can we look at an incremental approach to support the funding as you grow and develop. We do something as well called small acts, which is about that pipeline. We try to fund organisations in really small amounts to get into a stage where they could potentially be investment ready in the future. So it's about working with organisations at different stages in their development. We talk about transformational money, and what do we mean by that? So, as I said before, about risk and sharing that risk. We're asking organisations to kind of rethink their risk appetite and what that means for socially trading organisations, because we truly believe that socially trading organisations are low risk if you put the time and the effort in to build those relationships. We try to think really carefully about our language as well, I think, when it comes to money, because money can be quite scary. Loans are scary, growth potential is scary. So we try to demystify all that and just talk about money. So, in really basic terms, try to remove some of those barriers. And as I said before, we're very much in this together. It's a approach that we take, and we invest together in organisations rather than it being a done-to approach. And I think that peer-to-peer support element again is really critical. So we really see the peers becoming part of the Kindred governance structure eventually. At the moment, because we're only so new, we have a number of socially trading organisations on our board, representatives on our board, but we've got a view to it being a membership-led organisation as we develop as an organisation. Okay. So how does that relate? How does what we're doing relate to social policy and what's happening out there at the moment? I mean, we're really aware of some of the challenges in terms of the social economy. Only yesterday we were at the Adibawali Social Investment Commission regional launch here in Liverpool, and I think at that event it was quite clear, and it was clearly acknowledged that we are doing things differently here in Liverpool, and we can demonstrate through the investments that we've made in the past 12 months the difference that that's making, and the social impact that we're delivering, or the RSTOs are delivering. And I think it just goes back to the whole purpose really of Kindred is about increasing the social impact of Liverpool City region, and how we demonstrate that. I think that's a longer term goal for us to evidence that, and I think it's something that we're currently working on, but we truly believe that through the stories that we have and through the case studies that we have and the data that we're starting to collaborate, put together from a collaborative source, we will be able to demonstrate a really strong case for that. So we have, the intangible capital in abundance, we've got the human capital in abundance and the social capital in abundance. But what we're really looking for now is to develop that partnership approach. So how do we work with other social investors? Been lucky enough to work with Unltd before, and we look forward to working with Unltd again, because our ethoses are very well aligned. But we're working with other socially trading organisations and other social investors to see how do we make sure that the money that's in the social economy sector is fit for purpose. And then, how do we look at that place-based approach on a wider scale? So I think Kindred would not deem us being a true success unless we were replicated by other areas. So I'm now talking to other city regions about replicating a similar model to Kindred, to see if we can try and get a model like this off the ground in other areas of the country, which would be fantastic. Oops, let's go back. Okay, so just a couple of examples there of what some organisations that we've invested in, and as I said before, about the Black Social Traders Network that Unltd have been part of. The Black Social Trading Network is right across Liverpool City region. Kindred have a target of 25% of our social trading investments going to Black-led business. And we've achieved that in year 1, and we're set to exceed that in year 2 with just over 27% this year. So that is it's a really great program for us. I think that it's got so much potential for that to grow and develop, and to really see some organisations led by people of colour achieving what they're capable of within the city region and further afield. So that's a really exciting part of our programme. And then Future Yard is just an example of an organisation based over in the Wirral, here in the Liverpool City region. And this organisation started a music organisation really that transforms opportunities for people to get involved in music and to reclaim space that was derelict and underused. And it's become a really great community music venue. They've also just been successful, as I mentioned before, with the town deal for Birkenhead, and they've got fantastic plans for growth and development, but on the back of some of the work that we've done with Kindred. So yeah, that's just an example of the type of work that we do, and I'm really pleased that I get to share our model with you all this evening, and I'm hoping to share this further afield right across the country. So I'm looking forward to taking some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Jen. And thank you to Mike, and also thank you to Alex. That has been really, really beautiful to just observe and be able to bear witness to all the amazing work that you guys do. Just shifting our perspective on what we consider an economy and this textbook nonsense of it having to be so deficit funded and thought about. Okay, all right. So what I'm going to invite us guys to do is I had invited everyone to contribute to a Menti meetup where you could put in sort of comments around what would help you thrive, what could help you thrive. So I'm going to ask, is it Dan? Dan, are you going to share it for us?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. 1 second, guys.
So we'll just share that momentarily. We'll have a little glimpse at it.
I have to scroll it down to be able to
That's all right.
see it. So
we can have a little look at that. Anything that jumps out to people. Let's have a look. We've got their lower cost of living. That would be ace. No mortgage. Oh, yeah. Let's have a look. See, look at this. Increase in interest rate, decrease in interest rate, which would help. Yeah. I mean, can you see there? We've got their energy prices. They are completely and utterly out of control. And I suppose there's the articles that are saying that actually we're in a glut with with energy. There's lots of gas about the place. Why are we being chopped? So yeah, it's insane. All lovely. I can see some of our Together We Can comments there. We've got being treated as citizens, not consumers. Yeah, again, looking at more around this sort of sharing idea, the sharing economy. That's absolutely beautiful. Okay, right. If we can scroll down so we can get to a bit more towards the end. Oh, some of these are amazing. Yeah, we've got universal basic services as well. Not just universal basic income, but also services. Yeah, love that. Okay, all right. looking there, you've got a couple on the legal services. So mentorship, this sort of sponsorship of setting up businesses, is more intergenerational, collective, working together. Oh, some of these are amazing. Okay, then, you guys, we are about to go into some questions and ask for answers from our three wonderful speakers that we've had today. Again, if any more questions come up to you, please use the chat. Equally, if anything stimulates, please use the Menti meter as well there to just capture stuff that you want as well. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first question that we've had. And this is for Jen, but I'm also going to open it out to everyone else. And the question is there a sweet spot in terms of scale of business for the organizations that you support? So Jen, I'm going to go to you first.
Sorry, Monica, can you just repeat that? The sound was a bit loud.
So is there a sweet spot in terms of scale of business for organizations that you support?
Okay, it's a good question. We support organisations at very different stages in the development. So we work with organisations who are just starting off and who are just starting their journey in social entrepreneurship, and we work with organisations who are really well established and been doing it for years, but just need help to think about how they would grow their business and grow the social impact. In terms of the sweet spot, we don't favour either or. We think it's organisations at different stages in development are equally as important. So we work with the pipeline in terms of doing those small awards and those small amounts. We do have a ceiling in terms of what we're able to support financially, though, because we've only got a limited amount of money at the moment. That's why we're trying to increase the access to funds that we have by partnering and collaborating with other organisations and other social investors. So I think that we need to look at the whole spectrum of social trading organisations and what they each need at different stages in their development to help them grow and develop.
Thank you very much for that. Alex, I'm gonna bounce that question to you as well. So for me, I think I love the idea of a sweet spot because it makes me think of the donut economics, where you think of maybe making sure that we don't overshoot, we're not taking from the environment when we don't need to, and then we're not dropping through the hole where we've got people that are in need and their needs aren't being met. So in terms of helping social entrepreneurs stay in that sweet spot of wanting to do good within their community and possibly, not having that time or the capacity to get a paid job, how can you, what would you say in terms of, scale of businesses, organizations that you support, what would be, say, the sweet spot for them, please, Alex?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one because sometimes our social entrepreneurs really struggle with that transition away from grant dependency and to earned income. I think in bigger cities where people have got disposable income to buy goods and services from social entrepreneurs, the challenge isn't so great. But when you've got a whole city that's kind of, I think 54% of people in Stoke-on-Trent are living in fuel poverty. So that's, more people are than aren't. It's really tricky. So they've got to have some really kind of compelling offer that they can get this paid work. We've got an award called the Grow It Award, which is to help make that transition, because quite a lot of the time our social entrepreneurs reach a capacity. So they are doing all the delivery themselves and they can't look at focusing on strategy or engaging with potential customers or looking at business development. So it provides a bit of a cushion where they can use that for the living expenses to enable them to make that transition a little bit smoother. But I don't think there is a sweet spot in an area like I'm living in where those challenges are, even businesses don't want to spend any money. So it's, it's really tricky. Doom and gloom, sorry.
No, it is the reality of the situation. So thank you. So I'm gonna pose a question to you, Mike. So for you, Mike, I was gonna ask you, what is your dream? What's your dream? What's your big dream for the social economy in, say, I don't know, 5 years' time? If every single thing that you wished for came true, what would the future look like?
You're asking some good questions, Monica. I think 5 years, I would. My dream is a model of community-led regeneration, and that's only possible if you begin in a really small place. I used to be North Staffordshire, which is for those of you who don't know what North Staffordshire is. It's the 6 towns that make up the city of Stoke-on-Trent, and the one next to it called Newcastle-under-Lyme. And I think that's the size of it's about 300,000 people in size. So it's not, it's a small city, but it's a big town, and it's the right size for us to prove a model that is basically cross-sector, as Alex said in her talk before. It's the right size of economy, I think, that would be able to demonstrate and showcase a new economic model. And that's basically the plan that we're working to, is to kind of showcase how we can be more resourceful, how by being more cooperative, we can become more self-reliant. And I think, within 5 years, we should be able to prove the value and the worth of such a model. It's it'll become an operating system, we think, or we feel, that we can then begin to export. So it's really an opportunity, I think, to kind of develop an operating model for local economic regeneration. We hope that's what it'll become. And I'd like to think within 5 years we'll have some evidence of being able to have moved the needle on all sorts of different impact measures, social, economic, and financial, environmental, obviously. So, yeah. How's that sound, Monica?
That was lovely. Thank you very much. That was like a nice one future I would definitely like to play a part of. And I've got a question here from Nicola. So Nicola, I'm not sure if you are in the position, Nicola Hillary, if you are in the position to unmute yourself and to ask your question, if you wanted to. I'm just thinking people might have got a little bit bored of my voice. So Nicola, I'd invite you, ask your question, please. This is to everyone as well. Please just...
I feel incredibly inspired to hear about this Kindred model and the amounts of money that you're able to so patiently give to the socially trading organisations in Liverpool. And I feel a bit like I'm in a rarefied, privileged air here, but I have just been spending a lot of time with some charitable foundations, sitting on piles of cash, talking about how to socially invest their piles of cash. And this looks like the obvious answer if you want to get out of your investment in fossil fuels or other really terrible investments of the bad economy. Why not come and invest in something like Kindred, which is obviously the good economy? Obviously you've got this fantastic, the people you invest in don't pay any interest, but you're in partnership with a local authority that's put some money in. What if actually what the local authority was putting in was just the kind of, well, we'll give you the equivalent of a return, Mr. Investor. We got our tax take coming in, we'll just sort of take it out of there. And in terms of the impact we're getting for that, in terms of the investment of your money, that's massive. So that's the amazing idea bubbling in my head, having heard you tonight. And I'm just interested if you think there's is this realistic, or is this just me going crazy?
Thank you, Nicola. Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really interesting idea. And I think it's something that we strongly believe it is possible. But I think anything that's such, a radical change in the way that we think about the social economy will take time. And I think we're starting to make that shift now. And definitely Liverpool City Region, I'd like to think is leading the way with that at the moment. But I just think I think it'll take time to get to that full approach. I think it really helps that we've got a really supportive City Mayor, Joanne Anderson, who's really leading the way in social economy here in Liverpool City region, as well as a really supportive Metro Mayor and Steve Rotherham. I think if you have leaders who are willing to put their head above the parapet really and try something different with Kindred, then I think you really need to have people who are willing to take those risks, but also really addressing the fact that if you will invest in the social economy and kind of rebalance what you think is risky and what's actually interpreted as risk. As I say, if you put the work in to reduce that risk and minimise that risk, and then try to kind of communicate that, I think that's important. So I don't think we're fully there yet, if I'm being honest with you. I just think we're on that journey and we're learning. We're learning as we go along. And we're learning how to kind of collect the data that we need to evidence that, because I think that's the massive gap in the social economy sector at the moment, and a big barrier. If people want to see the data, it's like how can you demonstrate the impact that you're having in the Liverpool City region and further afield, and that takes time to really get that right. So I think that's absolutely our ambition. And I think it's just about working with like-minded organisations, not only in the Liverpool City region, but nationally. And this is why I'm here today, really, because I want to connect with like-minded organisations right across the city region, right across the country and internationally, and see that, how can we work together to make our argument stronger. We believe, and one of our straplines as Kindred is "Together we are mighty," and we really believe that, by forums like this evening, together we are mighty. We just need to make sure that we're pulling together in the right direction. So I think that's absolutely the aspiration, and it is possible. It just might take us a little bit of time.
Does anyone else want to contribute to that? Alex, Mike? Okay, right. I'm gonna go to another question. So let's see. I think I can ask this to everybody as well. So what shifts do you think might be needed in community activism, like transition towns, to be able to participate more actively in the social economy? And this is a bit of a two-part question. And what benefit could community activists bring? So I'll repeat that. So what shifts do you think would need to happen in community activism, example, transition towns, to be able to participate more actively in the social economy? And what benefit could community activists bring as well? Who's that going to? Alex, do you want to start with that first?
Yeah, I think a lot of community activism historically has been a luxury of people who are white, middle class, retired. And I think what we need to do is talk in a language that everybody understands, because even community activism and volunteers, there's a degree of exclusion, I think. I know in North Staffs, the conversations we've been having is about, use of plain English, reaching the unusual suspects, and how we do that, because it's, I know you hate the term, don't you, Monica? Hard to reach. People are really hard to reach because people don't reach well enough. So, they're people, they're in places, we can find them, we can nurture them, and it takes resource to do that. But for something to develop, you need to bring everybody along, otherwise it just becomes tokenistic. So it's really tricky, it's really resource intensive, but if you really want community activism to work, then everybody needs the opportunity to be involved. And actually that's about relationship building, it's about trust, it's about being in the right place where people want to be, and it's about understanding what the need is. It's about co-creating. It's not about doing two, because even at that grassroots level, there's still a degree of doing too. So I don't know if that answers the question about what shift needs to happen.
To me, that goes definitely some way to start thinking and shifting about how it can start to make a bit of a domino effect. I think definitely. Anybody else want to? So Jen or Mike, do you want to contribute to that question?
I think in my experience, that I think what's possibly the most important thing is having a story that people can believe in and get behind and own themselves. Because really, what you're trying to do is you're trying to move people to action and get ourselves organised to do stuff that isn't being done. And in order to, persuade people to act, they need to be inspired, and I think that they have to be given an experience that they can't get anywhere else. Because I think the experience is so important to get that right. If people feel valued and feel recognised for contributing, then it's more fun for everybody, for them particularly. And I think the only way to do that really is having an alternative narrative to the one that prevails. We have to give people a bit of hope without it being, blind optimism and blind faith. It's not about that, but it's about replacing one story with another one of the future. And that, I think, is just about storytelling, really. And, but making sure that the story is believable. And as Alex says, it's obviously it's important to be able to, if everybody needs to become, everything needs to be recycled. Everything has to be recycled. Everything. And, the real priority now has to be, how do you teach sustainability to people, when getting food for the kids is like more of a priority. So we need to find the incentive for people to kind of engage in that. And I think sometimes, we don't necessarily need to have a reward, because very often the reward is just giving people a chance to be heard. And so we talk about co-creation, but as you know, Monica, and as Alex knows, we work as peers. We don't work as, ordering people around. We just do it because we have a sense of wanting to do the right thing and show people how we're doing it, rather than telling people how we're doing it. We're very much showing the world what good looks like, not telling people how to do it, So I don't know. I think it's about getting organised above all, getting behind something that people can believe in, I think. But that's me as a kind of more of a kind of grassroots kind of activist with no resources. It's like, how do you get these complex issues landed in the place that's got other things on its mind, and that's the beauty of working in Stoke-on-Trent, because you have to figure those things out, but we're still ploughing on. We're not giving up.
No, love it. Okay, can I ask, we've got literally about 2 minutes left, but I would love Phil. Phil had asked the question. Phil Freedom.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. So I live in a town that has got a population of 8,000. Our borough has got a population of 50,000. So even Stoke feels like a metropolis to us, So my question is, what advice can you give to poor and rural communities where these kind of networks simply don't exist? And I'm just wondering whether you've got any examples of models that can work in these kind of spread out poor communities, which, to be honest, make up a lot of England, Wales, and particularly Scotland and places like that. So, it's not just confined to where we are. There's an awful lot of people who are in the same situation as us. And I'm just wondering kind of what advice or thoughts you could give towards that.
I can start to answer that if you don't mind. I think the answer is that there aren't any particular models that work. So I cover the Cumbria area. So as you know, there's more urbanised areas. There's also really rural areas. And I think where a little spark has started, it's been on an individual who's been really passionate about something. and they've actually gone out to where people are and done that networking. So it's been on them to become almost a leader, even if they've got no business experience or entrepreneurial experience. Maybe they're a community-minded person who's spotted a real need. So in Cumbria, there tends to be, so there is a social enterprise network, and they do meet in a place. So if people want to engage with that, they do have to travel. I guess with COVID, a lot of the stuff is likely to have gone online, but the individual social entrepreneurs who are working there quite often work alone. They don't necessarily engage with any of the kind of groups, but they've got a real sense of what the need is in the community, and that's because they've gone out into places in the community and sometimes lurked in rural bus stops, in the local shop, just to sort of get a feel. Quite often they're around, the social enterprises are mobile, so they will go into people's homes around well-being, loneliness, feeding people, online activities, and then the training that goes into enabling people to access those online activities. So yeah, I don't think there's a model. I think, the person who's the social entrepreneur perhaps has to be prepared maybe to travel if they want to connect with others, or join an online network that might be in a less rural part of the region. And also they're very well networked in terms of knowing exactly what the community need is. Was that helpful at all?
Yeah, thank you for that, Alex. I guess what, because we're going to that was sort of like a last question, so we're going to close there. But I think what it really points out is how economy is so place-based. So we really do need to get to know our local economy, our micro-local economy, to be able to then see how we can make change. What I just wanted to briefly do now is I wanted to introduce who I am going to call our keynote listener. And I'd like to invite Brian. So Brian Simmons, I'm going to introduce you in. You have got a beautiful, most terrific 3 minutes, Brian, to give you your pointers. And also, I know that you were going to share a little bit about Black Pound as well, the power of the Black Pound. So I'm going to hand it over to you for a terrific 3 minutes. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Monica. My first minute. I'll just have a little bit of feedback. It's been interesting for people to really understand the local economy and local market. That's so important in terms of that. We talked about being out in the country and so forth. And it's very important. And I think the whole discussion really kind of understands that and the importance of that and the nuance of having to adapt, which is also important in an economy. Let me just go quickly onto the Black Pound, why I support the Black Pound. I'm part of an organisation, what's called East Midlands Cultural Market. If you don't know about the Black Pound, in terms of black businesses, we always been marginalised in terms of getting funding for starting up our businesses or supporting our business. So Black Pound is really support that element in terms of marginal communities which have entrepreneurial skills, which have their own businesses, and really promoting it, but also understanding the black economy, and how do you circulate your local pound within your community, which is very important, because research will tell you that, in terms of the black community, we probably spend £1 within our own community and everything else goes out, which doesn't help locally in terms of enhancing our own small businesses, in terms of our own financial services, which is most likely will be like a credit union. So I set up market stalls, pop-up market stalls, which we support and highlight black businesses, and just educate in terms of how best you can actually generate your income, work within your community, because that's where it all starts. If you know anything about business, you start with your local friends and family, but then you have to branch out. So we've got that platform for local black businesses to really branch out and to really understand how that pound works, and to really understand the local community, how it's important to support local businesses. And if you don't support local businesses, as you see, they'll die a quick death. No matter how important or how passionate the person is about the business, if you don't get that local support, you won't last very long. So I promote in terms of black businesses because of that specific reason, but also other small businesses as well. It's important to buy local and support local. You have to start there. There's no if, buts, or maybe. It's okay going to the Asda and the Tesco's and all that kind of stuff. But if there's someone local, do something local, even if it's once a month, if you spend £5 with the local businesses, they will spend it locally as well. So it will help the local economy. So it's really to understand how the process works, how best for everybody to support local businesses and local authorities, or local businesses. That's for a quick 3 minutes. I hope I answered and answer some of the questions.
That was phenomenal. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Right, I am going to now pause for a moment. I'm going to hand it over to Rich, who is going to share reshare the Menti and do the whole wrap up and reflection. So, Rich, I'm going to hand over to you, Butte.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Monica. And thanks so much to all of our speakers and contributors this evening, to the Summit team who supported this session in the Together We Can Summit. Together we can create a thriving social economy. Indeed, we've gone from recognizing the value, as Brian was saying, of local community, the relevance of local community, the relevance of local business to that community, all the way up to a network, citywide network, really going, what do we mean by this? Social economy, socially trading organizations. For me, smashing it out the park with talking about millions of pounds. When you guys were in breakout rooms, Jen said, it's not enough, Richard. It's not enough. And I go, flipping heck, come on, let's go towards that future where that million becomes tens of millions, where we make that connection to those charitable funders who perhaps are investing in the wrong places and could really increase their impact, like Nicola was saying. So what a great evening. The recording of this session is going to go up on the Transition Towns YouTube channel. We'll share that link in a minute. Don't worry, Dan and Maria will come to that. And the final glorious thing, this is the way we do it, we close out properly, is I'd love to invite you to unmute, say thank you so much to all of our speakers, and good night and God bless, and we'll see you next time.
Well organised, guys. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Really interesting. Yeah.